All right, hello, hello, lovely Tanker, aka your mama on a mission, and we're reading 3 Feet from Gold. And we're going to start into chapter 2. So the quote for chapter 2, it starts with, "More gold has been mined from the thoughts of men than has ever been taken from the earth." And that's by Napoleon Hill. Chapter 2, called The Awakening. The lobby of Jonathan Buckland's headquarters building was awe-inspiring, with imported wood floors and floor-to-ceiling windows that made Greg feel small, even insignificant, a rare feeling for someone as self-important as this visitor. In that moment, Greg remembered the building he had visited as a young boy. His father sometimes took him along on business trips into the city. Those adventures with his dad had inspired Greg's dreams of success. He could not stop himself from comparing his boyhood dreams with his currently unfulfilled life. Things sure hadn't worked out as he had planned. It occurred to him that he had not been in touch with his family for a few weeks. Maybe it was a few months. He'd call later, he promised himself, when he had some good news to report. He didn't want them thinking he wasn't rolling in cash. A smiling receptionist greeted him. "Welcome to the World Capitol Building. Please take the elevator to the 54th floor and enjoy your visit." In a few moments it took to reach his destination, Greg pulled himself together. He put on his best game face and gave himself a quick pep talk. This was his moment to shine. He stood ready to exit the elevator, armed with all the self-generated confidence and charisma he could muster. When the doors parted, the eager guests burst out with the force of a rodeo bull jumping out of the gates. "Watch out there, Pops," he said as he pushed past the tall older gentleman who stood before him, presumably waiting to enter the elevator. Marching towards the reception desk, he held up a Neiman Marcus bag with the borrowed jacket inside and announced, "Hey there, I'm here to meet Mr. B. I have something for him." "Yes, he was expecting you," the receptionist began. Greg cut her off by responding all too loudly, "Was expecting me? What are you talking about? I was told to come to this place at this time to give him back his coat. I was told to come to this place at this time to give him back his coat. And now he's not here? Maybe I should have just kept the darn thing." "Sir, I think you misunderstood," the receptionist replied. I said was because you've already met him," she whispered. She pointed back towards the elevator door at the older man Greg had just pushed aside. Frozen in shame, his eyes bugged slightly as he gave the receptionist a "what do I do now" expression. Jonathan Buckland saved him from this incredibly unfortunate moment with, "I thought you were on your way to a fire, young man. I was just coming over to greet the man who had enough integrity to return my favorite jacket." Realizing his faux pas and feeling a twinge of guilt at Buckland's use of the words integrity, Greg's demeanor immediately changed. After seeing his picture in magazines all these years, he couldn't believe he had failed to recognize the renowned Mr. Buckland. Standing 6 feet 4 inches tall, he was a giant of a man with an even larger personality. It would be hard for anyone to brush past such an iconic figure. Greg turned to greet the great Buckland, whose smile now peeked from beneath his famed bushy mustache, which resembled walrus tusks. His unpretentious blue eyes contradicted the imperial image expected of such a man. When Buckland extended his hand, Greg handed him the bag. Accepting the item, Buckland said, "I appreciate that, but I was attempting to shake your hand." Oh, Greg replied, turning an even brighter shade of red. I apologize, Mr. Buckland. It seemed I cannot do anything right today. I really need a break. I should probably just give up and start all over. Nonsense. Understand this. We all make our own breaks, and at the end of the day, we are exactly where we choose to be. The tycoon paused and pointed to an open door of his office. Got a second? Realizing he had just been invited into the office of this legendary businessman, Greg tried to erase his awkwardness with a joke of sorts. Yes, I think I can fit in. As they stepped into the most tastefully decorated business office he'd ever seen, he could not help but notice the incredible view of the harbor through the windows. As he stepped into Buckland's personal world, Greg didn't realize that he was also stepping across the threshold into a whole new chapter of his own life. Take a seat, offered the host. You seem a bit uptight. Tell me, what's on your mind? Greg took the chair closest to the large desk and started right in. Sorry about back there. I'm very embarrassed, he said in a humble tone. I was excited to be here and obviously went a little over the top. I've been a bit overwhelmed lately and thought that maybe my luck had changed when I had the opportunity to meet with you. In fact, I have to confess I was hoping for a big break, and then I blew it with my behavior. I'm really sorry. My girlfriend just left me with no warning after 5 years, and I'm seriously thinking about quitting my business. I'm pretty much at my wit's end and ready to throw in the towel. Then, somewhat sheepishly, Greg went on. I can't believe I just unloaded on you like this. Once again, I apologize. He thought to himself, you are such an idiot, talking to Buckland this way. Like he really cares about your problems. No apology necessary, and you haven't blown anything. I'm a good listener, and it sounds like we were supposed to meet. You know the saying, there's no coincidences? I enjoy helping young people like you discover who they really are and what they really want. In fact, and the fact that you returned my jacket is a very good sign, even if your reason was just to meet me. He gave Greg a subtle wink. I have something that may help you. Buckland reached for a book on the shelf behind him and handed it to his visitor. It's about success. It tells you never to quit 3 feet from gold. 3 feet from what? Greg asked, accepting the book. Instantly, he recognized the title, Think and Grow Rich, even though he had never read it. Politely, he thumbed through the pages before attempting to hand it back to his host. Buckland smiled without moving to retrieve it. Greg kept his arm outstretched in an awkward stalemate before setting the book down on the desk. Sitting back in his overstuffed leather chair, Buckland said, I'm going to share another saying with you, one that has stayed with me for years. It is, never complain about your problems because 95% of the people don't care and the other 5% are glad they happened to you. That's real good. All right, so Greg looked at Buckland with an expression that showed he not only fully understood what Buckland was saying, but felt the reality of it in his own life. Now he felt even worse about dumping his problems on the older man. Buckland said, I like to prove that saying wrong. I care about people who want to and are willing to help themselves. Let me ask you something. In your opinion of life, in general, is the glass half full or is it half empty? Thinking about the query for a moment, Greg's direct reply to Buckland by surprise. It depends. On what, may I ask? Where the glass began, Greg responded. Go on. Greg finished his thought. The way I see it, If the glass started out completely empty and you're adding liquid to it, the glass would become half full. If the glass started out full and you poured out a portion and you poured a portion out, it would then be half empty. Reaching into his impressive hand-carved mahogany desk, Buckland pulled out a small notepad and wrote something down. The contemplative expression on his face showed that he was impressed by the unique response to an old age question. Buckland laid down his pen and twisted one side of his mustache in a thoughtful gesture. I don't know what it is about you, but I like you. Maybe you remind me of myself at your age. Buckland thought for a moment longer, then looked into the younger man's eyes. I think you may have potential. Are you willing to work on helping yourself? If so, I have a friend I want you to meet. If he's a friend of yours, I'd love to, Greg replied, feeling a surge of excitement up his spine. And why is that? Buckland asked, hoping for another unique response. Well, as they say, birds of a feather flock together, and considering how successful you are, I would guess your friends are hot shots too. You're right about that. My good friend Charlie, Tremendous Jones, always says that you're the same today as you will be in 5 years, except for two things. Buckland paused and gazed at his guest for what seemed like forever. In order to end the awkward silence, the newly open-minded student, what two things? With a smile, Buckland pointed to the book on the desk and said, the people you meet and the books you read. Think about it. We are the sum total of the knowledge we have and we are the sum total of the knowledge we have and those we associate with. Take note of this. If you read nothing but tabloids, that is what you will know and absorb. If you read biographies about great people and inspirational books, then that too is what you will know and absorb. Okay, I get that. And the people we meet part is true too, I suppose, Greg said. You got that right. Charlie always says, hang around thinkers and you'll be a thinker. Hang around whiners and you'll be a whiner. You'll be a better whiner. Excuse me. All right, let me start that again. You got that right. Charlie always says, hang around thinkers and you'll become a better thinker. Hang around whiners and you'll become a better whiner. Hang around a bunch of complaining, griping boneheads and you'll become a better complaining, griping bonehead. Greg burst out laughing as Buckland continued. I have just handed you one of the greatest books you will ever read, so that's number one. The second part of this opportunity to meet someone who will shine some insight on the treasures you will find within its pages. Thank you, Mr. Buckland, Greg said, looking a bit more closely at the book he had earlier set aside. Just meeting you has been a huge gift to me. I look forward to meeting whomever you suggested. And I see you jotted something down while we were talking. Did I say something wrong? Oh, heavens, no. In fact, you taught me something that I want to remember. Buckland turned the dog-eared notebook so Greg could read what he had just written. Whether the glass is half full or half empty depends on where it began. Another thing I have learned over the years is that all great leaders keep copious notes. In my case, I write short reminders to myself so that I can thumb through them later and instantly recall the entire message. And you just made my book. Inspired by the comment, Greg felt a renewed sense of self-confidence as he shook Buckland's hand. Things might turn out okay after all, he thought. Before he could get too far ahead of himself, John Buckland saw the cockiness returning in his new friend and brought him back down to earth with a question. Let me ask you something. Let me ask you something. Would I want to meet your friends? Greg smiled and replied, probably not, Mr. Buckland. Probably not. All right, so that's the end of chapter 2. Ooh, ooh. So if you are following along in this, of course, I'm reading this in real time. So I have like family and some things, so I had to stop and pause. So hopefully it didn't disrupt it too much. But write down the notes that stand out for you based on what I've read and based on what I'm reading and based on what I have read. So the quote for today, leading off on this particular chapter, is more gold has been mined from the thoughts of men than has ever been taken from the earth. And I'm going to leave you with a quote that will lead into chapter 3, which we'll do tomorrow. And it says, many successful people have found opportunities in failure and adversity that they could not recognize in more favorable circumstances. Ooh, 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 ooh. That's so good. So good. Many people have found opportunities in failure and adversity that they could not recognize in more favorable circumstances. And what that means is it isn't until sometimes hard times come or unfavorable circumstances come that we're able to see opportunities. When things are great, we're blinded by it. So what opportunities have you found or can you find in the adversity that you may be experiencing? Okay. Lovely Tank here, aka your mama on a mission. 3 feet from gold. Chapter 2 we just read. We'll head into chapter 3 tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.